Okay, let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time you checked the price of gas? Like, actually looked at the number on the pump and felt your stomach drop a little? Or went grocery shopping and stood in the aisle for a second too long trying to decide if you actually need the olive oil because somehow it's $3 more than it was 6 months ago? Yeah, that's not a coincidence. And if you've been brushing it off, telling yourself, it's just inflation, it'll go away, I need you to sit down for a second. Because what's happening right now between Iran and the United States is not just a headline. It's not just something for politicians and generals to figure out. It is quietly, steadily eating away at your paycheck, your savings, and your family's ability to get ahead financially. And here's the thing that actually drives me crazy. Nobody's connecting those dots for you. You're watching the news, you're seeing missiles and sanctions and diplomatic tension, and then 5 minutes later, you're watching a segment about meal prep on a budget. Like these two things are completely unrelated. They are not. They are deeply, fundamentally connected. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. So let's get into it.
Here's what most people get completely wrong. They think geopolitical conflict is a rich person's problem. Like, oh, the stock market dropped 2%? That's for people who have stock portfolios. That's for hedge fund managers and Wall Street guys. My 401k is tiny. I don't have investments. This doesn't affect me. Wrong. Dead wrong. And I say that with love, because I used to think the same thing. The truth is, conflict in the Middle East, specifically involving Iran, hits working and middle-class families harder than almost anyone else. Why? Because of one word: oil. Iran sits on approximately 10% of the world's proven oil reserves. It controls or heavily influences the Strait of Hormuz, which is this narrow little strip of water in the Persian Gulf, about 21 miles wide at its tightest point. And roughly 20% of all the world's traded oil passes through that strait every single day. 20%. That's about 18 to 20 million barrels of oil per day moving through a channel that's narrower than some American cities are wide. Now, think about that like a kitchen faucet. When things are calm, the faucet runs normally. Water flows freely, you barely notice it. The moment there's tension, military posturing, sanctions, a naval incident, threats to close the strait, it's like someone puts their thumb over the top of that faucet. The pressure builds, the flow gets restricted, and suddenly everything downstream costs more. And everything is downstream of oil. Every single thing.
In 2022, when tensions in the Middle East spiked and global oil markets got spooked, the average American family spent over $5,000 on gasoline alone. $5,000. That's according to data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. And that wasn't because people were driving more. That was because the price per gallon shot up. The same behavior, the same commute to work, the same school run, just dramatically more expensive. But gas is only the visible part. That's the part you can actually see at the pump and get angry about. Here's what you don't see. When oil prices go up, trucking costs go up. When trucking costs go up, everything that gets moved in a truck costs more, which is everything. Your groceries, your furniture, your Amazon packages, the materials your landlord uses to maintain your building, the supplies at the hospital where you might someday need care. Everything rides on a truck at some point, and every truck runs on fuel. The Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco published a study showing that a 10% increase in oil prices typically translates to about a half percentage point increase in core inflation within 12 months. That might sound small, but when you're already struggling with elevated prices, that 0.5% is the difference between being able to save something at the end of the month or not. And here's the part that really hurts. Inflation doesn't raise your salary. Your boss doesn't call you in on Monday morning and say, hey, oil prices went up, here's a raise. You just absorb it. It comes out of what was your discretionary income. It comes out of what you were saving. It silently shrinks your financial life.
Now let me give you the bigger picture, because Iran-America tension isn't just about oil prices. It's also about something called risk premium, and this is where it gets interesting. When investors and financial institutions perceive that there's instability in a major oil-producing region, they don't wait for prices to actually go up. They act in anticipation. They buy oil futures, they hedge their positions, and the price of oil goes up before a single barrel has been disrupted. It's like a crowd at a concert that hears someone yell fire. People start running before they see any smoke. This is called geopolitical risk premium. And historically, every significant escalation involving Iran has added between $5 and $15 per barrel to global oil prices almost immediately. That's not from actual disruption, that's just from fear, from uncertainty, from traders and algorithms reacting to headlines. And you are paying that fear at the pump, at the checkout, in your utility bill. In April 2024, when Iran launched a direct aerial attack on Israel, over 300 drones and missiles, oil prices jumped by about 3% in a single day. Brent crude, the global benchmark, spiked above $90 a barrel. That's one day, one event. And while that spike partially moderated in the following weeks, the floor of oil prices had shifted. It didn't fully come back down. That's what sustained tension does. It doesn't just cause spikes, it creates a new floor, a higher baseline, a permanent tax on your daily life that nobody voted for and nobody can easily explain to you.
Let me pause here and be honest with you. A lot of financial influencers will tell you at this point, don't worry, just invest in oil stocks, you'll profit from this. And look, sure, that's one angle, but I don't think that's actually helpful for the majority of people watching this, because most of you aren't in a position where a little stock gain is going to offset the real-life financial pressure you're under. Most of you are trying to manage a budget, build an emergency fund, maybe pay off some debt. So I want to talk about what this actually means for your real financial life and what you can actually do. Let's talk about 5 specific areas where the Iran-America conflict is hitting your finances right now and what you can do in each one. The first one is energy costs. This is the most obvious, but also the most actionable. Gasoline is one part, but home heating and cooling is the other. Natural gas prices are closely tied to global energy markets, and about 50% of American homes use natural gas for heating. When oil and gas markets get nervous, your utility bill feels it. In the winter of 2022, natural gas prices in the U.S. hit the highest levels seen in over a decade, and average household energy bills climbed by over 30% compared to the previous year. What can you do? First, call your utility company, like actually call them. Most major utilities have budget billing programs where they average your annual usage and charge you a flat monthly amount instead of swinging wildly. This doesn't save you money overall, but it makes your monthly budget predictable, which is its own kind of financial security. Second, look at your home's energy efficiency. This isn't a $10,000 renovation conversation. I mean small things, weather stripping on doors, a programmable thermostat, turning your water heater down to 120 degrees. These tiny adjustments can cut your energy bill by 10 to 15%. And in a volatile market, locking in savings proactively is always smarter than scrambling to cut costs after prices spike.
The second area is food costs, and this one surprises people because they don't immediately connect Iran to their grocery bill. But think about the supply chain. Fertilizer. Most commercial fertilizer production is heavily reliant on natural gas as a feedstock. When energy prices rise, fertilizer costs rise. When fertilizer costs rise, farmers' operating expenses rise. When farmers' costs rise, food prices rise. This chain is not theoretical. It played out in real time in 2021 and 2022 when global energy disruptions drove fertilizer prices up by over 80% in some cases, and U.S. food prices increased by the fastest rate in 40 years. What do you do about this? A few things. 1. Build a small food reserve. I'm not talking about a bunker and canned beans for the apocalypse. I mean keeping a 2 to 4 week supply of the staples your family actually uses. Rice, lentils, pasta, canned tomatoes, frozen vegetables. Buy them when prices are reasonable. This acts as a hedge. If prices spike over the next few months due to escalating conflict, you've essentially locked in today's prices for your household. 2. Start being strategic about protein. Meat is one of the most energy-intensive foods to produce, which makes it one of the most sensitive to energy price spikes. Learning to cook a few solid plant-based meals each week, even just 1 or 2, can meaningfully reduce your grocery bill in a high-energy cost environment.
The third area is your debt, specifically variable rate debt. Here's the connection that almost nobody talks about. When oil prices rise sharply, it creates inflationary pressure. When inflation rises, the Federal Reserve typically responds by raising interest rates. When interest rates rise, variable rate debt becomes more expensive. Credit card APRs go up, adjustable rate mortgage payments go up, home equity lines of credit become pricier. The average American household carries over $10,000 in credit card debt. At the current average APR of around 21%, that's already brutal. If rates climb further due to inflation driven partly by oil market instability, the interest burden on that debt quietly gets worse every single month. This is the sneaky one. You didn't take on new debt, you didn't change your behavior, but your financial position is slowly deteriorating because of something happening halfway around the world. What do? Prioritize high-interest variable rate debt right now, more aggressively than you maybe were planning. Get it paid down or refinanced into a fixed-rate product while you still can. If you have an adjustable rate mortgage, start looking seriously at whether locking into a fixed rate makes sense for your situation. Talk to a financial advisor or even just run the numbers yourself. The question is whether the certainty of a fixed payment is worth the cost. And in an unstable geopolitical environment, certainty has real value.
The fourth area is your job and income security, which is harder to control but critical to understand. Not everyone's job is equally exposed to geopolitical risk. Some industries are deeply tied to oil prices and international trade flows. If you work in transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, construction, or any sector with significant energy inputs or global supply chains, your employer's profit margins are directly affected by what's happening in the Persian Gulf. When margins get squeezed, hiring freezes. When tension persists long enough, layoffs follow. Now, I'm not trying to scare you into paralysis. I'm trying to activate you into preparation. There is a massive difference between those two things. Building an emergency fund is boring advice. I know you've heard it 1,000 times. But here's the framing that actually makes it click. Your emergency fund is not a savings account. It is insurance against geopolitical instability. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses in a liquid, accessible account, you are immunized against the financial shock of a sudden job loss that might be triggered by events completely outside your control. You are not helpless in the face of global uncertainty. You are protected. That emergency fund is your personal sovereign wealth fund. Build it like it matters, because it does.
The fifth area is your long-term investments and retirement savings. And here, I want to be careful, because I'm not trying to make you panic about your 401k every time there's a headline about Iran. But here's what you do need to understand. Historically, prolonged geopolitical instability in oil-producing regions is one of the factors that drives investors toward what are called safe haven assets, things like gold, treasury bonds, and the US dollar. Equity markets, particularly sectors with high energy exposure, tend to be more volatile during these periods, and volatility is emotionally taxing. It makes people do dumb things like panic sell at the bottom. The discipline here is counterintuitive. When you understand why markets are volatile, when you see the Iran-America situation as a known, understandable factor rather than just scary, random chaos, you are less likely to make emotional decisions with your retirement savings. Knowledge is literally your portfolio's protective shield. What I'd encourage you to do is look at your current allocation and ask honestly, do I have meaningful exposure to energy sector equities? If oil prices rise significantly due to sustained conflict, those positions may benefit in the short term, but they also carry concentrated risk. Diversification across sectors and asset classes isn't glamorous advice, but it's what keeps your retirement intact when the world gets unpredictable.
Now, let me tell you something that I think is actually hopeful. And I mean genuinely hopeful, not in a fake positive thinking way. Every major period of geopolitical instability in the last 50 years, the 1973 oil embargo, the Iran hostage crisis in 1979, the Gulf War in 1990, the post-9/11 period, the 2008 oil spike, every single one of them was followed by adaptation, by innovation, by people and economies finding new paths. The households that came out of those periods in the best financial shape were not the ones with the most money. They were the ones who were most aware. They understood what was happening. They made adjustments early, before the pressure became unbearable. They treated their personal finances like a small business, running lean, building reserves, diversifying their risk. That is not complicated. That is not reserved for wealthy people. That is available to you right now.
So here's what I want you to take from this video. Not panic, not fear, a plan. Audit your energy costs this week. Call your utility, look at your last 3 bills, figure out where you're bleeding money, and plug the leaks. Build or reinforce your food reserve. Not a ton, just a practical buffer. Attack your highest interest variable rate debt with urgency. Build that emergency fund like it's your most important financial project, because right now, it is. Understand your job's exposure to energy markets and supply chains, and if there's real risk there, build your backup plan quietly while things are still stable. And do not touch your retirement savings emotionally. Understand the volatility, let the knowledge keep you calm, and stay the course on your long-term allocations. Look, I know this is a lot, and I know it's frustrating that something happening between governments and military powers on the other side of the world can walk right into your kitchen and empty your wallet. That is genuinely unfair, and you should be frustrated about it. But frustration without action is just suffering. And you're not here to suffer. You're here to build something. You're here to make sure that whatever happens in the world, whatever tensions escalate, and whatever headlines break, your family is okay. Your finances are resilient. Your future is protected. The people who are going to come out of this period ahead financially are not going to be the ones who had the most to start with. They're going to be the ones who were paying attention when it mattered, who made the small adjustments, who didn't wait for the crisis to get worse before they started preparing. That can be you. That should be you. And after watching this video, you have every tool you need to make it happen. Now, go take one action today. Just one. Call your utility company, open a high-yield savings account, make an extra payment on a credit card. One thing. Because the gap between knowing and doing is where financial futures go to die, and you are not going to be one of those people. Subscribe for more videos like this, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one.